Look, there are a lot of issues that were talked about during this election cycle, but the dominating issue were related to the economic conditions facing the country, with high inflation. And if you looked at all the exit polls that came out of this election, it demonstrated that that was the driving issue in this election. There were a number of other issues, but none of them none of them were as intense as people focusing on the economic challenges facing the country. And so I think our elected leaders and the administration are going to continue to have to address those challenges. And so, we'll see policies that will likely deal with energy, because we've gotten away from our energy independence in the country. I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis, especially if the House flips to Republican majority, which it looks like it will. There'll be more emphasis placed on the border. I think that there's a belief that there hasn't been enough done to secure the border and deal with some of our challenges with immigration. And all of that, legal immigration ties into some of the challenges we have economically as well. So all of them go back, all the issues I think go back to dealing with the economic conditions in the country. The most significant thing is that there's a change in at least one chamber of the Congress. The House will likely flip to a Republican majority. And the last 2 years, both the House and the Senate were under Democratic control, along with the White House. So you had one party that basically was controlling all the levers of power in Washington, both the executive and the legislative branch. And now you'll have one chamber, and it's still unknown as to what will happen in the United States Senate, but we're going to have divided government. And when you have divided government, Washington operates very differently. Some will say that divided government did not allow for, big, bold agenda items for one party to get passed, and it forces more bipartisanship. I don't think that Washington will be completely, will stop doing any kind of work. But what it will do is they'll find issues that there could be bipartisan support. And you'll see, more moderate members of both parties working together to try and tackle some of the challenges that our country faces. If you look at the big toss-up races, one of the biggest surprises was probably Pennsylvania, because that went from having a Republican senator in Senator Pat Toomey, who's retiring, and now that will be Senator Fetterman, or Senator-elect Fetterman from Pennsylvania, who's a Democrat. So that's a flip. A lot of the incumbents won re-election, both sides of the aisle, and we're down to just a few seats to determine the outcome of the Senate. Nevada is a incumbent senator, Democratic senator, in a very competitive seat. Arizona is another one that's not determined yet, with another incumbent Democratic senator. And then in Georgia, there's going to be a runoff on December the 6th. And all three of those races have incumbent Democratic senators. And so depending on the outcome of those races will determine the majority in the United States Senate. I will say, too, that the margin in the House is also going to make the governing majority a little bit more challenging for the next speaker, because you have a very diverse caucus, and you're already seeing in some of the news reports that some of the more conservative members in the House of Representatives, the Freedom Caucus, has not committed yet to support Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, who I believe will ultimately be the Speaker. But I think it's going to, the slimmer the margin or the smaller the margin in the majority, it does make it challenging because you need to keep your caucus together to pass legislation. And so I think that, those that hope that there would be a larger majority are now going to have to deal with the challenges or the realities of a slimmer majority. You're going to have new leadership, not just at the top with the speaker and majority leader and majority whip, but all of the committees are going to change their chairmanship from Democrat to Republican. And the Republican chairs of the various committees are going to have different priorities than the current Democratic chairs. And I think business needs to be prepared to deal with the new leadership. And some of the priorities of the Republican leadership are actually going to be more favorable to the business climate than the current majority. And so we'll just have to watch and see. I think it's premature right now to predict who's going to chair what committees. I think businesses need to obviously be prepared that we're going to have divided government, and it's very different when you have one party rule. I do think too, Republicans have historically been for less government regulation, which I believe businesses in many cases appreciate. And so I think that will be more favorable. I think tax policy also may be more favorable. But there's still a lot that needs to be sorted out as we look at the new majority or majorities once we figure out what happens with the final vote count. The other thing that I think that businesses need to also pay attention to is government investigations, congressional investigations. Whoever is controlling the Congress or controlling the committee leadership, they have the ability to investigate actions of the executive branch. And in doing so, it may also involve the business community. And so I think that there'll be some members of Congress, especially on the House side, that are going to be very focused on government accountability and looking at some of the government programs. And so I believe that the business community needs to be thinking about, if they were involved in any government programs. Not that every business is going to be investigated, by no means, but I think that, they need to understand that, for lack of a better word, there's a new sheriff in town, and they're going to call the shots in terms of what they decide to make priorities and what they look into, and businesses just need to be aware of that.